That's what the slide says. My name is Matt Coles. I am a principal systems analyst with Tableau software. And I'm here today to talk to you about how Tableau uses data from its Tableau server to run its deployment and give our users a good experience using the service we provide. Just a couple of plugs here for other sessions that you might be interested in. There's IT at Tableau Cloudy with 100% chance of data. It's about how we're moving our on-prem Tableau server and moving into Tableau Online and shifting data into Snowflake to help support the transition to the cloud. Highly recommend it. Another one is turbocharging Tableau Server administrative views, which goes a little bit more in-depth into some of the back-end data that Tableau Server can provide if the levels I go into today don't do it for you. So check those out if you get the chance. A little bit about me. I've been at Tableau for about 6 years, since 2012. And in case you're watching the video recording, this is what I look like. It's me at my best. It's Maui. Who's not at their best when they're in Maui? So initially, when I was started at Tableau, I started working on ETL. So I was working on pulling data from Salesforce into SQL Server so that we could report on it using Tableau. I then shifted into becoming a full-time Tableau Server administrator at Tableau. So that was running Tableau's own deployment of Tableau Server, and that was been the majority of my time at Tableau. And earlier this year, I transitioned into a new role where we're taking what we learned running our own deployment and all those best practices that we developed and tools and things and talking to you, our customers, about how you can do the same. So just a little more about me. I'm in the Seattle branch of Tableau, and I love riding my bike at night through the city. It's so peaceful and quiet, and you get the whole city to yourself. So if you're ever in Seattle and you want a nighttime bike tour of Seattle, hit me up, and I will ride bikes with you, and it will be fun. Okay, enough about me. I want to take you back to about a year and a half ago at Tableau. So we had, it was the last day of the business quarter, always a very busy day for sales, trying to meet their quotas. I'm sure it's the same at your companies. And so in operations, our job is to make sure that we're supporting those salespeople, pulling in those deals by making sure the systems are running smoothly. And everything was going great. It was a calm, quiet day. It was beautiful outside. And I was walking down the hallway to get another cup of coffee when suddenly a wild-eyed VP appeared and said, I think I just deleted an entire project off Tableau Server. And I said, okay, let's go look. So we ran to my desk, and the project was still there on Tableau Server. We pulled it up, but we could see the count of workbooks and data sources dropping by the second. They were actively being deleted before our very eyes. And the VP said, is there anything we can do to stop this? Can we shut down the server and just cancel it? And I said, no, if we do that, there's going to be some corruption. We're probably going to be worse off than if we just let it do its thing. And he said, okay, well, we have a backup from last night, right? And I said, yeah, of course we have a backup from last night. And he's like, well, can we just restore that and get it back? And I said, no, if we do that, we're going to be taking the entire server down while we're at end of quarter. So that's going to impact all the rest of the teams. That's going to be hours of downtime. We can't do that either. But I said, okay, I think I have an idea. So we have an active server that's hosting that last night's backup. I think I can get the content back if you just give me a couple hours. So I went into full-on admin hacker mode, and I compared the repository data from our backup server to the live server that we had, the production server, to find out what was missing. Interworks makes a great tool called Enterprise Deployment Tool that allowed me to copy that content back from that backup server to our production server. And then I was able to use the REST API with a little Python script to restore ownership rights to all that content that we'd published back to the production. And so I got everything back. I told him, and I was like, hey, I think I've got everything back. Go check it. And he did. And he said, it looks great. Thank you so much. Oh, I can't believe I deleted that project. I'm so sorry. I'm like, no big deal. Who doesn't delete a project accidentally at the end of quarter, right? We've all done it. But internally, I was like, I got to tell somebody about this, right? So I did. I told everybody in the world about it on the Tableau community forum. Kept his name confidential, but and so next day, because I was feeling particularly smug still, I came in early and I popped the delete key off his keyboard just so we wouldn't have any more accidents. Well, later that week, I had a colleague from the QA team IM me and say, hey, I heard about that project thing. And I was like, yeah, I know, right? And he said, no, but I've heard that it's actually kind of easy. We've gotten some customers who have done the same thing. And I was like, what? And so he pointed me to a ticket in our bug tracking system And it turns out it's more of a user interface issue, but it actually is really easy to delete a project by accident on a Tableau server. So when you have multiple workbooks selected in the UI, you're supposed to click Actions, and then from there, you're supposed to hit that delete button, and that will delete the workbooks you've selected. Well, what people are accidentally doing is picking the ellipsis at the top and then pushing delete there, and that will delete the entire project. And so when he told me that, and I explored it for myself, and I found out, like, yeah, actually, I could have done this myself. It's not really that hard to do. And so I felt really petty and mean about the whole thing because I'd made a big deal about it, when really it's more of a product issue. So what's the point to that story? The point is that if you don't step into your user's experience as a Tableau administrator, if you don't understand the real issues that they're facing when they're trying to get their work done, you're doing your users a disservice, and you're not allowing your service to get better, because when you do that, you force yourself to improve the service. And we force ourselves to improve our products. This is actually a core value at Tableau, is that we use our products. And we use our products so that we know it's easy to delete a project because we have the opportunity to do that ourselves. So empathy is important. Now let's talk about how we can do that as we scale. This is some snapshot from our current environment at Tableau on our biggest server. So we're supporting about 3,800 employees actively using Tableau server. About 2,200 are actively using desktop. And on any given 30 days, about 650 people are publishing something up to Tableau server. Now, if any of those 3,800 employees and users have a problem using Tableau, whether it's refreshing an extract or they can't figure something out or server's behaving in a weird way, it could prevent them from actually publishing a dashboard up to server. And if they don't publish their dashboard up to Tableau server, people aren't going to benefit from it. And if people aren't benefiting from what people publish up to Tableau server, it has a cascading effect and people stop adopting Tableau server. It's not good. So it's important to help your users through their issues, but this can be extremely challenging as you scale up. So since I've been at Tableau, we've gone from about 300 employees and active Tableau server users to about 6,000 active Tableau server user accounts. And that's just not, that's really challenging. It's easy to help somebody emailing you once a week, even kind of fun, like I enjoy helping people, right? Like every once in a while. When you get 100 emails a week, it's another story. It makes you want to run away to a remote island for the rest of your life, and I recommend Maui because it's very nice and they have great pina coladas, so, you know, do that. So the response that often comes with these kinds of scaling challenges, and sort of an instinctual thing, I think, for admins in general is, okay, well, let's just create some policies that restrict the people to very heavy-handed and sort of archaic rules that they have to follow before we can let them publish on our precious server. And the problem with that approach is that in restricting users from using Tableau and publishing their things up on Tableau server, you're really stifling their creativity. And I'll show some examples of that later on in the talk. The other dynamic that can kind of emerge is that people can stop telling you that they're having a problem altogether, and you might not even know it. And again, that can really prevent people from adopting Tableau server because they never get their content up. They don't see what use there is in it. So if they encounter too many problems, they can also start up their own shadow IT. And nobody wants that, right? So it's good to make your users happy. So at Tableau, we've taken a different approach. And the approach we've taken is to use the data that we have on what our users are doing and problems that they're having and policies that they may be out of compliance with or best practices that we want them to follow that they're not following, and automate help for them by sending them emails that are specifically tailored to their problem or to our policy that help them take action and actually fix whatever it is that they're doing. So we use two tools to do that, and I'm going to talk about both in turn to you. Both are community-supported tools. They're both completely free to use, but they're not supported by Tableau. They are community-supported. The first of the two is Tableau Server data sources. So at the heart of Tableau Server is the Tableau Server repository database. It's a Postgres database. Many of you know this already. And you can connect directly to it with Tableau and analyze the data in there. And that's fantastic, and everything is great, and it's so easy to use, except it's not at all easy to use. It's a mess. It's a beautiful operational database, but to get analytical questions answered is very difficult. Even if you know the right joins to do, and many people don't because they see these questions on the forums all the time, and it's fair to ask those questions because it is confusing. Even if you know those joins, you still have a lot of data cleanup to do and a lot of massaging and reshaping of data to make it actually useful for an admin. For example, this is a set of custom SQL that I wrote for background tasks and getting information on what extracts are failing and succeeding. No one should have to write this, okay, to get answers out of Tableau Server. Nobody. So what this became was the first of the Tableau Server data sources that I wrote and put out on the community for everyone to use to analyze their server data. So I'm going to talk about 4 of them today. There's actually 6 out there since I built this deck out before I finished the last 2. But also I don't have time, so go and check them out on your own. But I'll talk about these 4 in particular at a high level, and then I'll go into a demo about one of the other ones. So the first is called TS content. These are all prepended with TS because that's Tableau Server. That way you know it's Tableau Server data source. So TS content is focused on the workbooks, data sources, and views of Tableau Server. So what kinds of questions can we answer with this? We can answer what is currently published up to Tableau Server. We can find out who owns that content, how popular that content is. If somebody leaves, then how screwed are we to find new owners for these workbooks and data sources because they're super popular, right? What project do they live in? We even have hierarchy information built into the data source. So if you want to find out what's within a project hierarchy at whatever level, now that we have nested projects in Tableau Server, you can do that. So lots of great questions about content we can answer. And we can ask, when were their extracts last refreshed? So if you want to set up a data-driven alert on special content that's especially important to your business, you can do that. The next is called TS events. So this is built off the historical events tables in Tableau Server in the repository database. This is an audit data source. So you're asking questions about who did what and when, and what did they do it to. We can ask questions about adoption. So if you spend 6 months building a viz, you can actually see how that adoption is increasing over time and who's looking at it. Are the executives looking at it, right? So if I built this dashboard for the executives and they're not even looking at it, then why did I spend 6 months on this project, right? Lots of great questions you can ask. If you have a performance issue with a certain workbook and you want to trace it back to when was it last published or who published it at what time, you can do that with this data source as well and track back when your problems may have started. And then there's the global server questions you can ask, like how active are my users altogether across all of server? What are our peak load times? TS background tasks is a data source focused on extract refreshes, subscriptions, all the stuff that's handled by backgrounders on Tableau Server. So we can, as we did, answer questions. We got questions from our executives on, hey, I set up my subscription to run at the 7 a.m. schedule, so why am I getting it at 8:30? And if we had this data, we could have said, well, because we have a lot of stuff running at 7 a.m. and it's actually too much. It's overwhelming our backgrounders. With this data, you can actually find those bottlenecks. So you can shift schedules if you need to. Are extracts succeeding or failing? Many of you have used the admin views. They're great for a beginning admin. But if you want to really ask more questions and make it an operational thing, you need to retransform the way that viz works. And to do that, you're going to need to use this data. What caused them to fail? Getting that error text is really important to knowing what to do to fix your extracts. And which takes the longest. I mean, who do we need to talk to about their long-running extracts? Hey, this is running every hour and it takes 45 minutes to run. That's a lot of server time we're spending resourcing your extract. Is it really worth it? And we can also use it to balance schedules. So if we see we're doing a lot of work at 3 a.m., maybe we can shift some of it off to 2 a.m. Or earlier. Finally, the TS users data source. So this one I'm particularly proud of. I only built it like 3 weeks ago or so. But what it does is it gives you a high-level view of what your users are like on Tableau Server. So we can ask questions about who are the most active users. We can ask questions about who hasn't been using the service, who hasn't been signing in over the last 30 days. Or we can ask questions about site roles, right? So we have information about what the user is doing and their license level. If you're using the new subscription license for the site users, you can actually ask questions like, are the people who are creators and licensed to create actually creating? Or are they just kind of not doing anything? Maybe we need to demote them to an Explorer license. Or vice versa, if we have explorers that are doing a lot of web editing, they're using that web edit interface and they're always in building things, maybe we need to upgrade them to a creator and give them more capabilities. And then questions about like who's really the most influential person on Tableau server, who's writing the really important content that people rely on super heavily. And this question is actually one that I asked myself as I transitioned into my new role, out of being a server admin and more into talking to customers about how we run server. Because over the years, I had built up these relationships with all these people at Tableau that were really great, and I knew them. But there were other departments that I really didn't have a good sense for what they were doing with Tableau in, and I really needed to get their stories to talk to you about how we're using Tableau in those departments. So I thought, hey, I'll use my data to find out who's really most influential in those departments, and I'll talk to them. So that's what I did. And I'll talk to you about the takeaways for that in a second, but first I want to run through a quick automated demo of using TS users to answer that question. So the first thing you notice is that we are connected to a published data source on Tableau server. I didn't have to do any joins. I didn't have to know anything about the data at all, in fact. No calcs, no nothing. So the other thing you might notice is that we have all these beautiful folders. Look at these folders. Aren't they great? They can organize your fields so that you don't have to go searching for all the random fields that you're looking for. It's a great way to organize. These are best practices for all published data sources, by the way. You should be following these when you publish any data source independently to Tableau of the workbook. Okay, so one thing to know about this data set is that for users are only unique within a site. So if you have someone that has the same system name across multiple sites, it's not guaranteed that they're the same human if you're a big enough company. So just keep that in mind as we go through here. Down in the bottom, we have all these measure values. So this is aggregated information about what that user has done or owns. So we have owned content, counts of owned content, how much content do they own, what's the activity on that content, so are people using it, at what volume? And we also have information about what that user themselves is doing. So we have information about how many things that they've published over the last 30 days, for example. And an access data source in this instance. And the other thing you'll notice about this data source is that we already have pre-built comments on all the fields so that if you hover over each one, you have a little built-in data dictionary. It will actually tell you what the field represents, and you don't have to guess or ask somebody or figure it out yourself by analyzing the data. So again, best practices for data sources. Use them, please. Share the gospel of best practices for data sources, because it's very useful. Okay, so let's answer a question with this data set. First, let's just grab all of the users on Tableau server, and we'll put them out on rows. So we'll grab the system username. It's out on rows. That's all the users on Tableau server. I'm not going to use the site name because this is a single site server, so I don't have to worry about that. They look a little funny because I had to anonymize the data, but just try to ignore that. Okay, so we got about 7,500 users. All right, so the next thing we need to know is who is most influential on Tableau server. Okay, so we have a field for that. And as a proxy, we're just going to use the unique users served views. So what this means is how many unique users actively accessed these people's views over the last 30 days. Okay, so boom, all that's our most influential users ranked from top to bottom right there. So that's all of them. I don't need to talk to everybody to fulfill my mission about getting information from these other departments. So we'll do a quick top 30 filter. We'll just bring it down to the top 30 most influential people on Tableau server. Okay, no problem. Okay, but that wasn't really my question. My question is, what department are they in? Now, unfortunately, Tableau server does not have any org structure information from your organization in it, but we do have a separate data source at Tableau that will let us analyze that. It's called the Who data source. So this is our own internal data source that has just hierarchical org structure information in it. And what I can do is I can blend it based on the email field that is common to both data sources. So for every user, they have an email. I have an email address in the Who data source as well. I just blend it. And now I can pull out org structure information. So I've got the area and the group field. I can pull those out. alongside the name. Get rid of the nulls. All right, so now I have a list of the most influential Tableau server publishers and content owners by department. And so I actually did do this. I actually did talk to 15 people from different departments, most of whom I'd never talked to before. And it was a really great exercise, and I actually recommend that you do the same at some point, because it's just really valuable to hear their stories. And so I'll share 3 takeaways with you real quick, because I'd be remiss if I didn't. The first was that 7 out of those 15 people were not analysts. So 7 of the 15 most influential people in their department across Tableau server were not analysts. A lot of them were actually sales managers who knew what their team needed to succeed in sales and what data they needed and what operational workflow they needed to do. And they built their own dashboards, and they became so popular that other sales managers would pick them up as well and start using them at the same time. We already have a whole team dedicated to sales analytics at Tableau. But what they built was not exactly what the sales manager felt like they needed, so they went and built their own thing. And it was hugely successful. So that was kind of amazing to me. Now, one of the reasons those people were able to be successful is because they were using published data sources that we had built on our sales data and curated for easy analysis. So they didn't have to do any joins. They didn't have to do any of that other stuff either. They were able to just jump in, do their analytics, figure out what, do the dashboarding bit and publish it up. So that was a huge enabler for them to be able to do that. And finally, having conversations around the same set of data can really make for productive conversations. So the example here is our food and beverages manager at Tableau was having some issues with our food vendor because sometimes deliveries were coming late or they're delivering the wrong stuff. And she also found through some of the data she had collected internally that we'd been overcharged by $20,000 for mandarin oranges. Well, we love mandarin oranges, but not $20,000 love mandarin oranges. And so what she did was she asked the vendor for their data, and she collected data internally from the office manager. She brought that together in a dashboard, and she brought it to him, and she said, hey, look, we're having some problems with our service. Can you help us with that? And they said, yeah, of course, because they were having this conversation around sort of an objective truth about what was happening. It wasn't anecdotal, like, oh, we don't, we're bringing the wrong stuff. That's not actionable, right? So they were able to say, oh, these deliveries in these areas are having problems. We'll talk to the drivers. We'll talk to the folks that are in charge of that. And it was a really productive thing. So they were able to solve a lot of problems that way. So having conversations around data can be really great. OK, speaking of conversations around data, I find in my history as an admin that I spent a lot of time reviewing a dashboard, looking for problems or outliers, and then talking to somebody about it. And that was the cycle, right? Check the dashboard, look for problems, talk to people over and over again. And so eventually, the scale got to be where I couldn't really do that effectively anymore, and I didn't really love doing it anyways because it's a lot of manual work. And I thought, hey, if the viz is telling me who to talk to anyways, can I just have the viz email the person that I need to talk to and tell them what I would say anyways? And so that leads to the second of the 2 tools that I want to talk to you about today, which is VizAlerts. So what VizAlerts does is it reads the marks on your data on your dashboard. And based on any condition or threshold you want to set, will dynamically send emails to anyone with anything in it based on your data. So it's an open source tool. We put it out on, it was actually the first open source tool that we put out on GitHub at Tableau back in 2015. It's written in Python, but there's also a Windows executable. So if you want to run it without installing Python and all the modules, and that works too. And you can run it separately from Tableau server. It doesn't have to be on the server itself. So I'm going to use an analogy to kind of explain how VizAlerts thinks about things and works. So if you think about your viz, and you think about the marks on your viz as individual blades of grass on a lawn, some are different heights than others, right? So you can think about that like the threshold value. VizAlerts is a little bit like a lawnmower. It's not going to destroy your data, but it's like a lawnmower in that it will pick up the blades of grass that are above that threshold and shoot them out the side as emails. So each mark will become an individual email that gets sent. So just to give you a more Tableau visual example, we have a scatter plot here, and highlighted on the left, oh, I have a pointer, that's right, ooh, there it is a field I called email action. So I just created that calc, and I named it email action. And what that does is it tells VisAlerts, this is your threshold for determining whether we're going to send an email or not. And this is just Superstore sales data. All I did was create a simple calc that sets a threshold, and for when it's at its threshold, it returns a 1. And if not, it returns a 0. And so that's actually the trigger for VisAlerts to say, I need to send an email based on this mark, or I don't. So we're at the mark level defining the criteria for the alert to go out. Now, because it's a calc in Tableau and it's discrete, I can throw it right onto color, and you can see which marks will throw the emails. So you know at a glance which ones would trigger an alert condition and generate an email. So the question is, what goes into that email? And that is also going to be defined by our data. So all of the properties that we want our email to have, the to, the from, the subject, the CC, the BCC, the body, everything, are fields in your Tableau dashboard. So all you need to do is create the right calcs with the right names so that VisAlerts knows, oh, this is what they want to send. So for example, we have a field called email to. Within it is a text string that contains 2 email addresses that are semicolon delimited. That maps directly to the email that that VisAlerts will send. So that could be static or it could be dynamic. I could build in a reference to another field, or I could construct it on the fly, or I could just do a static text string like I've done there. For the subject, same thing. This one's very basic, just a simple text string. For the body, we get a little bit more fun because we can write HTML within our text string, and it will actually format that as HTML in the body of the email. So we can do some rich text formatting. We can build tables if we want to, for example. We can embed images from the internet if we want. Now, a particularly fun thing is that we can actually build in references to vises on Tableau server and embed them directly in the body of the email. So by using this viz image placeholder text here, VisAlerts is going to read that and say, oh, you want the image of this viz. And then within these parentheses, we have the full path to the viz on Tableau server. So as long as you, the author of the workbook, have access to that viz, VisAlerts will go out and it will retrieve that viz as a PNG and embed it directly into your email. Now, the other thing is, with VisAlerts, you can actually tack on URL parameters to the end of that. And because this is a calc in Tableau, you can base those filters on your data. So you can actually filter out, you can set custom filters depending on the email that goes out so that the email contains a PNG that is customized to every recipient. So we're talking about like email bursting, basically. Automated ways of using the same viz to generate different data and send it to different people. So lots of fun. Let's walk through an actual use case now using both of these tools. So I even heard it today, actually. This is a use case I hear all the time. We have a lot of stuff on Tableau server. How do we find out what people aren't using and just get rid of it, right? Cleaning it up. How do we clean up our giant mess of Tableau server content? This is our Tableau server. We have almost 9,000 workbooks, tons of data sources, and we can't keep just growing and growing and growing because our backups take longer and longer and longer, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and people can't find things as easily. So it's a good practice to go and clean things up. So how do we do that? So what we're going to do is we're going to generate an email for every user that has any item on Tableau server that hasn't been used in the last quarter. And we're going to send them a nice email that says, hey, we're just going to get rid of this stuff for you because nobody's really using it. And if you have a problem with that and you want to keep something, all you have to do is click the link next to it. That's literally all you have to do is click that one time, and we'll save it for the quarter, and we'll revisit it next quarter. Right? That's a low bar for users, right? We could have said, hey, everybody, go delete the stuff that nobody's using. And that's asking a lot of our users, right? Like they have to go to Tableau server, they have to sort, they have to figure out which ones that aren't using. Oh, does it have any subscriptions? Does it have this? That's the kind of, and the people aren't going to do it anyway, right? Like they're users. They're not going to follow your instructions, right? So this is a great way to make it easy for them to follow the policy, because the policy is going to happen. We just give them an easy way to opt out of it. OK, so let's do that. All right, so this time we're using TS content, data source. I'm just going to pull the name of each item on Tableau server out to the rows shelf. So this is literally every published data source, view, and workbook on Tableau server. It's not real because we only have 500 of them or so. So it's truncated data, but All right, so we need to know what type of thing that is, right? It's not enough to just know the name. We need to know what it is. So if we take the type field and we throw it out there, we'll be able to see what these are. So we have views, we have workbooks, we have data sources. When it comes to cleaning up server, we don't clean up views. We clean up workbooks and data sources because a view is really just part of a workbook anyway. So we're going to keep only on the workbooks and the data sources, just so we're working with just the ones that we're going to get rid of. Okay, so how do we know what people aren't using? Well, we have all these beautiful access count fields down here in the measures. So we have one called access count last 90 days. So this is literally a count of the number of times that this item was accessed in the last 90 days. So we'll grab that and we'll just put it on the filter shelf and we'll filter everything out that's not 0. No, it does not. Yes and no. Talk to me after. Okay, so no one's accessed these in the last 90 days. Great. What if somebody published that today, though? What if it's brand new and it just hasn't had a chance to be accessed yet? We don't want to get rid of that, right? So we have another field called item age that we can use, and we can just make sure that all this stuff is actually old. It's been there a while. So we just, again, throw it up on this filter shelf, and we'll just do it for the last 90 days, make sure that it's at least 90 days old, and it hasn't been looked at in as long. Cool. Well, nothing dropped off, but better safe than sorry, right? Okay, so now we need to build the email that goes out for these items. We know what we're going to get rid of. We just need to find out how to build the email. And so I've already built out all the calcs to make this demo faster. So we have all our email calcs right here. Email action, body, footer, from, header, subject to, all this stuff. And I'll talk more about the header and the footer in just a sec. So the first one is email action. That's the trigger for whether we're going to send an email or not based on the row of data. And in our case, we've already used filters to get rid of everything we don't care about. So we're just going to return a 1 for everything. So everything will send an email here. Oops, don't go so fast. All right, so now for the to address, this is actually going to be dynamic because we're going to send it to whoever owns that content. It can't be a static string. It's going to be dynamic. We actually have the field for the owner email in the data source already. So literally, we just pass that right through to the to line of the email. So whoever owns this item will get the email. Okay. And then the next one is the subject, which we'll keep fairly generic. Everyone's getting almost the same subject. We're removing your unused content for you. I did add the owner-friendly name in, so their actual name, just to make it a little more personal, because ad people know that you get better responses when you put the name of the person in. It makes it so personal, right? So we could personalize it a little bit. Okay, now, since we're going to send 1 email per row, that means that everyone who has, let's say, 10 items on Tableau server that we're going to get rid of is going to get 10 emails. Well, we don't want 10 emails. We want 1 email with all of the items in it, right? Otherwise, we're just spamming our users, and they don't want to be spammed. So we're going to use a special feature in Visalerts that will actually consolidate the lines of the email body across these different rows for every recipient. So the way we do that is we define a header and a footer that are repeated only once for the email. And then the body will be concatenated. So anything you put in the body field will concatenate itself across every row, as long as that data is going to the same to address. Okay, so let's walk through those fields. So we'll go through the header. So this is going to be the beginning of the body of my email. And at the top, I've got some HTML. It just says, hey, you've got some items lying around. We're going to get rid of those for you. Here's the list. And then below that, I have the beginning of a table tag in HTML. So I've opened a table. I started with the first row is just going to have column headers that describe what's below it. So it's all static stuff right here. Okay, but I didn't close the table tag, and I didn't add any additional rows. Okay, so the next one is going to be the actual body field, and this is what's going to be concatenated across those different rows of data. Okay, so here you can see I'm populating those rows with each item's information. So I have the name of the item, the type, the project it's in, and then I have the URL link below, and I actually have a link to one of the views of the workbook, or if it's a data source, I have the link to open it in WebEdit. So that when they click that link, they're either opening a view from the workbook and triggering that access count to go up 1, therefore knocking it off the list, or doing the same for a data source and accessing the data source so that it drops off the list. So that when they get that email, they have the chance for about a week or so to click those links, and all that stuff will drop off the access list as they click it, and then I'll run my scripts as an admin to remove that content from Tableau server. Okay, so that's the body, and that will be iterated across. So that's every row in our table. And then the footer is just very basic because it's just closing the table tag. So I literally just close the table, and that's the end of my email. So then the only other thing that I need to do is take all those fields and make sure that they're in the detail level of the viz itself. So I can highlight all of them, and I can put them directly on the detail shelf. That's the only way that Vizlers is going to have access to that data when it runs. So it has to be on the detail of the viz somewhere. It could be in the rows, the columns, the colors, somewhere in the detail, anywhere, it doesn't matter. As long as it's in that summary data for the viz, then Vizlerts can access it. There's one more thing I need to do, and that is to tell Vizlerts to do that concatenation of the bodies instead of setting one email for every row. And all I do for that is drag in a new column called consolidate lines. So I can just put that on detail as well, and it will know to behave that way as opposed to sending one email per row. So here's the email we generated again. I'm not going to run a live demo because it takes too long, but this is what Vizlerts would generate. It's a great way to just give your users what they need, and if they want to ignore it, they can just ignore it, and we're going to get what we need anyway, which is a clean server. So very powerful and simple way to get your users to abide by a policy that you set. Now, I'll answer questions at the end, don't worry. After that 2 weeks is up, I have a couple tabs in this workbook that will automatically generate the archive and delete commands. So based on a single workbook, we can not only send the email with the Vizlerts tool, but we can also run the commands that will download and archive that content as well as delete it. So at the end of those 2 weeks, you download these, you copy and paste them into PowerShell, and your server is clean. So by using these two data sources, we can give our users a good experience. We can help them with problems and policies. We can help them with a lot of stuff, and we can do it all automatedly and tailored to their own specific situation. I'm going to walk through a few examples now of other alerts that we've set up based on this Postgres data and these data sources. So we have criteria around published data sources that are certified. Does anybody use certified data sources yet on Tableau server? Okay, cool. Yeah, so those are really important for us. We want to make sure that we have good standards around what's in the description. Is the person who owns it still licensed? We don't want people certifying everything. We want only the high quality content that we're actively maintaining certified. So what we did was we made sure that we had a viz built that says, okay, if your data source doesn't meet these requirements, if there isn't certain text in the description, then we're going to send you an email and ask you to fix it. We're going to link to a wiki article that describes our quality standards so you know what to do to fix it. And so this is a repeat alert that will just run every day, and if they don't fix it, it just keeps going and irritating them until they do. And so the other great thing is we're CC'd. The admin's alias is CC'd on this email, so that if they have any questions and they need additional help or they think they should be an exception to the policy, they can just reply back to us, and we can keep that communication going. So we have automation, but if there's an exception to it, they can engage directly. So this was your question, I think, Alex, actually, earlier today, which is, what about stuff where people are refreshing extracts on server and no one's actively looking at that content? And we're just wasting resources on backgrounder, right? So we have an alert that goes and looks for that specific thing. So if the threshold value of the number of people who looked at something is way below the number of times we're refreshing it, so like if we're refreshing it all week long, every hour, and only one person's looking at it a week, that's kind of a waste, right? It's not really an acceptable business ROI, I would say. And so this will automatically email the owner of that and say, hey, look, we're spending a lot of time on this. Do you really still need it? Or can we scale back the schedule? And give them a lot of options for how we can address the situation. And sometimes it's just stuff people forget about, So having this automated way to bug them about it is really great. This one, oh yes, we have SQL Server that replicates data across different geos. So we have offices all over the world. We want them to have access to data, and our backend database will replicate the same data out to the different geos in different servers. Well, the problem is a lot of people will connect to the wrong server on the wrong continent. So by accident, they'll connect to the Seattle version when they're in the UK. And their dashboards load slowly as a result because you're going over that whole network path. Well, we detected that using some of these data sources and said, OK, we see that you have a workbook on the London Tableau server that's pointing at the Seattle SQL server. So can you fix that, please? Click these links. That's all you have to do. It'll automatically pop up a list of the items on Tableau server that need fixing, and then follow these steps. So it's literally step-by-step instructions, particular to their issue. When somebody leaves the company, they often leave behind very popular content, and you've got to find a new owner for it. And project owners are not always really up on the whole, like, someone left, I have to have someone take over for this, unless your project owners are like really good at their jobs all the time. But ours aren't always. So this will automatically go out and tell them, hey, this person left, and they'll probably say, oh yeah, I know at this point. But they also have all these workbooks and data sources that are highly used by the company. And then they might say, oh, shoot, I've got to find someone to own this stuff. So anytime anyone's unlicensed, we can email the project owner and say, hey, can you find new owners for this stuff? And then finally, everyone's favorite, extract refresh failures, right? People need help with that. And to be honest, the extract refresh failure notification that goes out from stock Tableau server and online doesn't really help you very much. It doesn't tell you the actual error most of the time, and it doesn't tell you what to do about it. So we built a custom one that will actually give them the raw error, and it will give a suggested action based on some regexing of the error. So if we can recognize common errors that people have problems with, we can give them custom instructions for it, and even link out to wiki articles and things like that. That will tell them how to fix and resolve the issue on their own instead of bugging the admins. And if they have problems with that, they, again, can just reply back to this email and engage with us directly, because it has us CC'd. So 3 things in conclusion. Empathy improves your service. Understand the problems that your users are having and help them with them. You can't do that at scale, so automate it. And in so doing, you can be less restrictive with your policies and a little bit more responsive, and give your users more freedom to add the value that they know they can create. So I'll leave you with some resources. This is the slide you want to take a picture of. So I'm going to give you like 15 seconds to take your pictures. I know you're going to anyway, so just go take them. These slides will all be up later as well, but everyone likes to take pictures, so go ahead. So the first one is the data sources. They're out in the community. There's 6 of them. You can download them, enjoy them, just reply back to any of these topics on the community if you want help. I jump in very quickly, very responsive with answering any questions. Visalerts is the second link. It's on GitHub, like I said. And then I just, this morning, secret to you, published the stale content remover workbook that we built together in the last demo. So you can go and download that, point it at your own Postgres, and you'll be able to run that, that tool if you want to remove stale content. Finally, please finish your surveys. I'm the track owner for all the Tableau and Action tracks, and to figure out what we were doing this year, I looked at all the data from last year from the surveys. So help us figure out what we're going to do next year by filling out the surveys, please. That's my plug for that. So thank you. Appreciate it.